everyone. Welcome. Good afternoon. Actually, good morning from Florida. Both of us, Pablo and myself, are both in Florida, different coasts. For those familiar with Florida, he's closer to Miami than me, just so everybody knows. My name is Lauren Gray, founder and director of Hospitality Digital Marketing. I also do a show that gets promoted on Facebook for HSMAI EU. Every Friday at 11:30 a.m. in U.S. time, so you see us then as well. I have the privilege of being able to join a absolutely awesome person because they know so much more about this when it comes to data and usage, and that is Pablo. Pablo Delgado from Mirai. Rather than me explain who you are, please a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. Here from the East Coast in Florida. I'm the CEO of Mirai. Mirai is a company that we've been working with the hotels and the direct channel of hotels for 20 years. And our goal is to boost the direct channel and make the companies more profitable in the end. So we work with technology, we work with marketing, we work with the strategy and distribution. And we've been doing so for 20 years. So a pleasure to be here, Lauren.
It should be a lot of fun. We do have some housekeeping items that we have to go through to make sure everyone understands the context of our conversation today. As always, we never talk about, and this is a disclaimer here to understand, the competitors' room rates, surcharges, conditions, terms of service, price, allocation, share of customers, on and on. That allows us to talk fluently about the dialogue of our industry without necessarily getting into semantics that would prove to be in any way influencing in a negative way. So just so everyone knows, we follow our antitrust policies quite seriously for that. So with that, I got to remind everyone, we do this every Tuesday. This is my first Tuesday doing this, so I get to go and say, hey, I'm doing this Tuesday. But every Tuesday, HSMAI Europe does this. I actually, because I get to do this, I get to go over and say hi to my family that live in the Netherlands. So for them watching today, hi, see me again. Yes, we just had a call yesterday, day before for Mother's Day. But anyway, but that's what we do every Tuesday, and it's our privilege to be able to talk about some pretty cool stuff today. Pablo, our discussion is about direct channel. And you were instrumental in the construct of what we were talking about today. You have the data, you have the sensitivity, you have the business that is firsthand. I have clients in Europe, but you by far outstretch that by many, many numbers. Mm-hmm. A little bit about your perception as to current business in Europe, and then I imagine you want to step more into the direct channel value contribution, and I will be happy to throw in where I think I can have applicable information to that. But please, a little bit about how your perception of direct channel is with Europe right now when it comes to travel.
Sure. It's been more than 16 or 15 months since we started this pandemic, and now we have a much clearer view of what happened with the mix in channels, right? In the distribution. So hotels starting down their businesses for a few months, and they started opening, let's say in June, July 2020, right? And to many of those who closed again in the fall, right? Because there was no business whatsoever. So it was a terrible year. But what happened in the channel mix in these hotels, especially in the last months, we've seen an incredible increase in the online share of the mix of the pie, right? So we've seen the online channels growing whereas the offline channels are decreasing or they are close to zero. Right. So when I'm talking about offline channels, I'm talking especially about tour operators and those wholesalers in the offline part, right? The B2B channels work in offline and online. I'm talking about the offline businesses, which is many times the corporate, the smaller travel agencies in the streets, right? They were closed, so there was no booking, no pickup, right? So everything was online, and today we're getting to the first Q of 2021. We see the online channels clearly dominate. Most of the demand is domestic here in the US and there in Europe as well. And in the US, the domestic demand is super strong. So it's enough to fill hotels, right? But in the European Union, it doesn't work that way, right? Especially in small countries such as Portugal, where the domestic demand is very small. Mm-hmm. And they depend on British and Germans to go there on vacation, right? So it's domestic, it's last minute, is very volatile, is flexible. There's nothing non-refundable, which is bad for hotels because they cannot everything can be canceled anytime, and that is terrible from a hotel perspective, right? And the last thing that is important to remark is that the corporate segment is still, let's say, dead, so to speak. So there's very little demand in the corporate segment and the MICE segments that are very, very important for many European hotels.
Yeah,
So
I know that from our
right?
right. And I know from our earlier discussions when we were first thinking about what we wanted to talk about today, we were talking about the contrast between, say, the U.S. Economy as it's going through its processes and how it might reflect a little bit of what to anticipate for the European community when it also gets to face better vaccination availability and the ability for people to start changing the restrictions as to their localities as to what they can and can't do. Going back to that in just a minute, I want to go to something you mentioned on, and that was we really had the legs cut out from us. I know we're stating the obvious. I know this has been discussed by many people as to what happened, and we literally the world stopped for a year, to be frank, and we're now trying to rebuild what we're doing. And a lot of, as you said, Portugal being a great example, the locals didn't necessarily travel within the country itself. A lot of times people traveled in. That's the amazing part I know from being a U.S. citizen going to Europe is the shifting of where people go. I mean, my family in Holland and in the Netherlands travels to Spain. They travel to Germany. They travel to, it's because everything is so in proximity to each other that the benefit is there. It's not that they don't go someplace else in Holland, but it's usually close enough that they don't have to stay overnight unless there's a duration of time. Everybody shut down. Furloughs happened. Nobody could go to work. And so people looking to travel, and I know for this year we've been aspirational, like, man, when I get to travel, this is what I want to do, is now getting slowly translated based on their availability of vaccinations and ability to travel to where exactly is that. And their old mainstays of travels agencies and so forth, there's just nobody sitting behind the table anymore because they're still not working. So that's kind of, I guess, my lead into our discussion about the direct travel as well is how do we amplify the value of direct channel for what we now know is the business that's coming? Because we do know the business is going to come as more vaccinations get available, more people have the latitude of being able to travel. We can talk about economies and job changes and labor and all that stuff, but really, what is your feelings about what people should be doing about direct channel? What should we be doing now for utilizing the value of what direct channel can provide us?
Well, I think the comparison with the US is very interesting. And before going to the direct channel, that I think is to me is the second stage, which is the once we have demand, how can we direct that demand to direct, right? But I think your point to the US is very interesting because the US is 2 to 3 months in front of the European Union in terms of vaccination, in terms of politics, I would say, because in the US, the US is a very different market. It's a super huge market, domestic market, very strong, with a single framework. Even though the states have some power, so to speak, but there is a clear. I mean, people can move freely within the country. That doesn't happen in the European Union. European is much more complex. We have many countries with different legislations within countries. They have regions they have power to set some additional restrictions, and then we have the UK leaving the European Union, which is a third layer of complexity. So the freedom of moving in Europe was very, very limited. So the demand was the only demand that was available was the local domestic proximity demand, which was very low, especially in countries such as Portugal or maybe Spain, right? Not that much in maybe in France or in UK. There are bigger population, bigger cities such as London. But now that the restrictions are being lifted, I think we can talk we can compare what happened in the US with what will happen in the European Union. I think demand is starting to boom, as you mentioned. It's starting to grow, especially for July onwards, right? July, August, September. And now hotels are seeing some pickup that they weren't seeing before, especially not only the direct, the demand was mostly online and mostly direct before. Now they're starting to see Expedia growing, Booking.com growing. Even some tour operators are starting to sell August, September, October, right? So the question now is what hotels can do to keep that direct share as big as possible right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
because the first priority for hotels is getting demand, right? But once that they starting to see that demand coming, how can I keep that direct share as big as they have it now? And many hotels are not doing anything. And that's a little
Mhm.
sad, Lauren. I think they will see their share decline over time at the same time that they increase in previous months. But they will
Mhm.
not do anything because they don't have the knowledge. They are afraid of of I don't know of impacting OTAs and getting less demand. You know, the
Well,
demand is something that hotels don't control.
yeah, and just from my first thing from the U.S. perspective first, I guess, and then I'll translate that to a little bit of what I have with clients in the EU, is here domestically. There's been three types of hotelier involved at this point. One is the people that battened everything down and saved every penny they could, just stopped, just shut down. We can't. New York is a great example. I had clients in New York that had to shut down. There was just absolutely, they were even being told to shut down. Like, sorry, we can't do anything for you. You just have to shut down for business. Then there was those that tried to survive through the pandemic, still squeeze every penny they could, do whatever they could to maintain, didn't spend anything that was not a necessary kind of thing. And then there was some businesses that actually were doing well. I wouldn't say fantastic, but they were doing well. They were in prime locations that still were demanded, maybe by medical facilities where there was a lot of people that needed to stay for durations, expats coming back in that needed to quarantine,
Mhm.
things like that. And now that we're coming out of it, we're beginning to realize that there's also that segmentation for how people are planning on responding in the U.S., and I'm speaking specifically U.S. right now. Maybe we'll see how it mirrors to the U.S. and EU in that sense. Is some are just dusting off their old methods and trying to launch them again. Like, okay, we're back in business, and they're taking old ads, rates, and dates, and putting it out there. They're just turning on what they used to do. Oh, my paid ad campaigns, let's turn those on, and it's tone deaf, and it's not resonating with people because the world has changed, as we know, so much this past year. And then those people that didn't spend money to take advantage of the fact that the world had stopped are finding that their technologies are not all that silo stuff of my CRM doesn't talk to my CRS, my PMOS doesn't talk to my PMS, all that technology that didn't collaborate because we're so busy thinking that we'll eventually do it. A lot of companies didn't take advantage of it. And one uniquely different thing that you and I discussed was the US brand centricity doesn't exist as it does in the EU, as it does in the US. And the brands have lost a lot of their identity. So there is a vacuum of opportunity in the US that may not be the same translation for EU because it isn't so brand centric, but it is reflective of this lack of progression that you were talking about, where people just are not focusing on where they can get their business right now, and they don't know what to do with it because EU has been very collaborative and working with tour operators and corporate travel and like negotiated rates and consortias, and there's a relationship that's much stronger in the EU from my experience with it, and those aren't really back in usage yet. So as you said, hotels are sitting there going, what do I do? I've never had to do this before. I've never had to do this.
I think you touched a very interesting point and problem at the same time, that the hotels that don't have the right technology many of the times. So they don't know what's going on. They don't know. They see the direct booming or the domestic online, especially booking.com booming compared to other channels, but they don't know what's going on. They don't know if those clients are the same that they were coming before or they're different. In many of the times, I would say most of the times, clients going to hotels in the last 6 months have been new clients from a CRM perspective. There are local clients that they couldn't travel anywhere, so they travel in proximity. So people surrounding Madrid, going to Madrid, surrounding Paris, going to Paris, right? So the thing is, if you don't have the tools, if you don't have the CRM, the PMS properly integrated with each other, you have no clue what's going on, right? So that's a big problem. And this is why a big difference in the US, where the brands have all these tools running and working. Even though the big guys here in the US, especially Marriott, Hilton, they for love thousands of people, and you know that. So they are understaffed completely, but they have the tools running, gathering data, analyzing. So once they have their teams back on board, they will see what's going on and they could analyze that. But in the European Union, the hotel industry is much more fragmented. Hotels are much more independent hotels, and many of them are small hotels. They have no technology, so they are completely lost. But at the same time, they're seeing that their direct sites are growing. I mean, their sales are growing. So my fear is that once the travel restrictions are lifted, and Expedia starts growing again, and TUI and Jet to Holiday in Europe start growing again, that the direct channel will decline over time, and hotels understanding nothing, right? So I think hotels can do a lot, and the first thing, and it's a good point, is invest in technology if they haven't done it yet, right? Which is what's going on. What do I have the right tools? And many of them don't have the right tools. The direct channel group just because it was the only channel that had ability and prices and clients, and you know that before traveling, you wanted to know the COVID-19 measure the hotel had taken, the pool was open or closed, and because of that, you went to the direct channel because you wanted to know the source of information, right? But that's not going to last too much. So the opportunity window is closing. This is how I feel. Hotels don't have the technology; they have the knowledge. Some of them, but you said these three groups: those who follow the strategy of closing everything, I think they follow that. They miss. That's not a good strategy in the long run.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that because my wife being Dutch, when I first started traveling to Europe, many years ago, I was always impressed with tour operators, and because tour operators were kind of a passé medium in the United States. They were very large and prominent 20 plus years ago. You know, you go get your cruise, you go get your flight to Bali or something, but they really weren't for domestic travel. It was more for international travel, people organizing, because there was less of information available. And I was always impressed for the whole time I ever visited family was that the tour operators were so predominant in every town that we went to. There was always a tour operator there. There was always brochures and windows about places to go, you know, Mallorca or whatever, you know, that was what you, and I think from perception of clients that I've had in Europe is that was still the mentality of they didn't really expand their direct channel value historically because all these other channels were in place that were operating for them. And they didn't have to worry about collaborating the transportation requirements of people to get to them. The tour operators facilitated that, how to get train tickets, how to get bus tickets, how to get whatever it was to get there. It was a coordinated effort through the tour operator, and people were very comfortable in that medium. And now, because the tour operators, and we've had, even prior to COVID, there were some large tour operators that went out of business. We know that happened. You know, then COVID kind of exacerbated that with a lot of the smaller operators running out. Now these hotels are being, I wouldn't say burdened, they're being asked to help travelers coordinate what used to be done by others. And they don't, as you said, point out things of, okay, this is how you get to us. On my website, you know, this is how you find out where the restaurants are on my website. There's never been that expansion of content for direct channel need that they had historically because of what was been going on. And whether the industries come back or not, between now and then, you're making a great point. You have to do this stuff. You have to offer these kind of things.
But you're right, and this is an interesting difference that I just realized when I got here to the US. That is, here in the US, there is usually a division between the ownership of the asset and the operation of the asset. So you have the owner, which is usually a private equity firm and fund and a big financial business, and the operator of the business of the asset, which is a brand, which is Hilton and Mirai. That in Europe is not usually the case. It's starting to get that business in Europe, but it usually is the same owner who owns the asset and runs the business. So it's a different mentality in the business. And at the same time, there's a division in the European Union that doesn't exist that much in the US, which is you own the hotel, you operate the hotel, but you don't sell the hotel, which is funny because you own the hotel. Why aren't you selling the hotel to your clients, oh no, that's the role of TUI and Jet to Holiday and the Thomas Cook. It used to be Thomas Cook, right? So that division, it is very much oriented in the vacational resorts such as Mallorca, Greece, or Canary Island. Those places, not that much in the cities, right? But it still exists, and we do have clients, new clients, especially this year, that they call us. We need to start from scratch. So what PMS should I get? What channel manager should I get? What booking engine should I work with? Because I have nothing, and I had exclusivity with TUI, and they called me last month telling me that the contract is broken. So I have to start from scratch, and I have no idea what clients I had, right? So that, of course, that is just an exception, but that is still going on in Europe, especially in the Mediterranean, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big difference.
And I noticed too, is like for me, when I traveled and we stayed at hotels, I'm probably worse. I mean, hoteliers are the worst people to stay at hotels because you see everything: high dust, dirt, things that aren't being cleaned correctly. You know, things are spelling errors on a website or whatever. And I remember to this day a beautiful hotel we were staying at. I went up to the general manager, who just happened to greet me because of me having it anyway. And I mentioned the fact that there was an error on his website, a misspell, and he says, "I have nobody to talk to about that. It's I." And I was surprised because you think the general manager of the hotel would have that direct they would have access to. But to your point, the construction of how business has historically been done is in the reliance of relationships with other organizations that handled aspects. And a lot of hotels now, the property is not actively engaged in its marketing. It's not a part of its process it's there to operate the business. It's to make sure that everything functions the way it was being presented, and it coordinates and handles things. The general manager was a brilliant person, wonderful person. Service was wonderful. Product was wonderful. But the idea that they didn't have any actual channel of communication to affect their business was surprising to me. So really, it echoes what you just said, is the modality of business in hotels within the European community is really different than the US.
But at the same time, it makes a lot of sense because hotels were very profitable working that way. So their margins were huge, right? So they were making a lot of money. That's the first thing. Second thing, the European Union is today, it's borderless continent, but it wasn't in the past. So the tour operators made a lot of things in terms of passport control, language, customer support. And in the US, everybody speaks in English, but in the European Union, you have, 15, 20 languages. And many of the countries, many of the population in Denmark, Denmark, that's not the case, but for Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, they don't speak English, right? So it did make a lot of sense that you needed tour operators to sell it overseas. The thing is that you don't need them anymore. And I think, of course, Barcelona, Madrid, Lisbon, Paris, Rome, urban hotels don't work with tour operators anymore. So they now control their direct channel. They now control their communication. They control the OTA relationship, right? But there is a huge difference, and both markets are huge. The urban hotels is a big business, but the vacational resort business is still huge, and they are 5 years apart, right? In the distribution ladder, so to speak. So vacational resorts are in 2010 in distribution terms compared to urban hotels. They're much closer to the US standard, which is OTAs are the biggest channel. Direct is big, and wholesalers small, and no tour operators. That's the classical distribution mix in Europe.
Right. Want to bring out first off, thank you very much from Greece agreeing with us. I always love being agreed with. It's like rather than somebody saying you guys are full of no, but the fact that the because technology is critical, and I think probably at this point, now that we laid the premise down to it, we probably could talk a little bit more about solutions, because obviously people, thank you, Captain Obvious, for probably pointing out what everybody already has a feeling of what is the issue, but there are tangible solutions, and there are also some metrics associated with what we're talking about that are in play that are different now than they ever have been historically. And I refer specifically to the changes in first-party and third-party cookie tracking. And for those unfamiliar with that terminology and or the impact of it, given the fact we just talked about that most people don't have to deal with these things, more than happy to get into some granularity to it. But going to what was acknowledged by Nikos, thank you, Nikos, was technology is the key for those hotels that have influence or control over their technology. Pablo, you pointed it out. The ability to aggregate the functionality of your technology is probably your first best path of solution. That obviously, as we're saying, direct channel is a high value. And I do appreciate the fact the first thing we didn't talk about with direct channel is the value proposition, because that is a Captain Obvious statement, but it is very clear. Direct channel is one of your highest value channels because of the cost for acquisition is so low in comparison to GDS, consortia, LNRs, things like this, wholesaler contracts and agreements and so forth. And wholesalers have their own leaky bag, so to speak, where they sell off their wholesaler price and then let you undercut prices and create issues and so forth. So direct channel is a nice direct, wow, that's a redundant word, value proposition of what you're doing. So from a technology perspective, Pablo, what would be your initial, if a hotel's going, wow, I'm left out on the gutter here, my relationships are in limbo, I'm not getting the business from the channels I used to get, as we pointed out, where should I start tackling my technology? What are some of the suggestions you have about what technologies they should first consider and what they should do with them?
Well, the technological stack in the hotel starts in the PMS. I think the PMS is, of course, the heart of the business, and it aggregates everything, mostly the information of your clients. What clients are you getting from what channels, right? And it should aggregate the information of the revenue as well as the cost of each of the bookings. And very few PMS are ready to inject the cost part of each booking. But for those who do accept them, they're quite a lot, hotels are not using those fields. So I think the technology is one of the problems, but the second big problem is how to use that technology. So there's very good technology out there. So in all parts of the stack, you have the PMS, you have the CRS or channel manager, you have your website, you have your booking engine, you have your CRM, you have your RMS, your revenue management system. You have many pieces that can be nicely integrated with each other, even being different vendors. So integrations have improved substantially in the last 5 years. Sure. 10 years ago, you had great technology that didn't talk to each other, but that doesn't happen anymore. So you can find very good integrated different pieces of technology. You don't need to work with Sabre anymore. You don't need to work with Amadeus anymore to get one piece that works together. You can cherry pick the best in class, and I would definitely suggest that. But I think the biggest problem is not choosing the right technology. It's but using it correctly. So many hotels don't have that knowledge. Many hotels think that they can run the business in 2021 with the same team that ran the business in 1995. And I think that's a difficult bet. I think it's difficult to believe it. You have two options. You either train those people, so transform their mindset, because everything has changed so much in 20 years. So I'm not saying that those people are not valid anymore. I'm just saying that they have to be trained in the distribution world that we're living in. Or you get new people, new talented people. So there are a lot of talent out there, especially now with this crisis that many people have before love. So just get new people that can use that technology properly. Because if you get the technology, you get the Ferrari, but you have no clue how to drive it, you have the same problem, even having a Ferrari, right? So I think the technology and the knowledge are very closely related.
I completely agree with you, and I would add to it just a little bit of saying that technology is about, as you pointed out, awareness. Where's my business coming from, and defining it in terms, whether it be channel of acquisition and or demographics and or purpose of travel, defining those things. And then there's the understanding of it, which is, what do I do with that information now? Like, okay, now that I know where my business had come from and why they were coming and what they potentially will be coming for, what do I do with that information? How do I relate to them and or get in front of them compared to my comp set or compared to other destinations I'm competing with or what have you? And that turns into the third part, which is how do I react to this? How do I now function in this new world of? I would give the caveat to something you've mentioned about technology, and that is the Um, a lot of times people overbought their technology because they were sold stuff. I don't know a better way of saying this. They were sold platforms, and that the platforms were sold with all the whiz-bangy of what it could do, but was it really used for that? Possibly not, more probably not really. And sometimes we're ready to throw out the baby with the bathwater because we have lost touch with what our technology actually could do for us. Because of that, sometimes a retraining is helpful. A friend of mine, Bonnie Buckheiser, who spoke with me for HSMAI when we were traveling through the US and Canada, she called it Xerox training. You bought a new piece of product and you had somebody trained on that product when they first bought it. Well, the retention of most training is about 40%. Okay. So that person operated the system at 40% awareness of all that it could do. Then they end up training their replacement. Well, that person also got 40% of 40%. So eventually, after the third training, you have somebody that may know only 10% of the total system's capabilities, only because of the sheer metrics of being trained by somebody So sometimes retraining from the core and making sure your platform is up to date. Sometimes, companies for cost savings went over and said, well, there's this new addition and it's going to cost you. Oh, no, we're fine. The system's working the way it is. It's all good. Maybe before you just jump over with a whole new thing, you look and make sure that you're not missing something you already own, kind of mentality to it.
That I think goes back to the problem in quotes, of course, of what hotels have, which is a very healthy business. So if you didn't have such a healthy business, you would constantly recycle yourself because your profitability would be on it, right? So, but the thing is, if you keep having 40% margin every single year with the same team, the same knowledge, the same tools, what incentives you have to change it?
Right.
None, right? So the thing is, the hotel business are so usually, of course, I'm talking generally, statistically an average, such a healthy business that the incentive to innovate, to invest in training, in people, in technology is very low. And now with this crisis, things have changed dramatically, and tour operators and many offline chains have vanished so far. I mean, they will resume, of course, but hotels have realized that they have to do all those things, such as invest in technology, invest in team, invest in training. And training means not just, give a 5-day course to my receptionist. No, it's like maybe 5-day course every single year, So to keep her recycled and up to date, because everything changes so fast in distribution. You know that, Lauren. So you have mobile, you have the facilitated booking, you have metasearch, you have voice bookings. Now you have these free booking links in Google. You have TripAdvisor Plus. You have so many new fancy wording that pops up every 3 to 6 months. So if you got one training in 2014, you know nothing today.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So training is not a one-time shot. It is like every single year you need to be trained, and that's not only the business. It's also a responsibility for the people. The people have to be curious. I mean, the employees have to be curious and learn how to read by themselves. It's not like I have to be trained. No. It has to be in your DNA too. You have to constantly read. There are a lot of sources of information out there. I mean, podcasts, blogs, many things that you can listen to or read, and because everything changes very, very fast.
True.
So technology and training and mindset of the people are 3 pillars of the foundation of the direct channel. So we are still talking about the foundation of the business. We haven't even talked about the strategy, loyalty, marketing. But I think it's a very important thing. If you don't have technology, know-how, and this mindset, you will fail for sure, right?
Yeah. But getting comments in chat also agreeing with us. Thank you very much, Nikos and everyone, about, you're right. Investment in training, and especially now, and this is a contrast. I don't know how it's going to work out, because let me explain first what I mean. I feel that international travel, hospitality, the spirit of hospitality, when I travel internationally, is a more dedicated person in Europe than it is in domestic US. I think domestic US, we tend to cycle employees without a strong investment into their future. We're like a pass-through industry for a lot of people. They work as a server, or they work as a cook, or they work as a housekeeper or front desk agent until they're going to wherever they're going to. And we're fortunate enough that maybe a few of them decide to make this a lifetime career. But I know from traveling and enjoying people internationally that there's a more dedicated spirit of people that work within hospitality in Europe, where a front desk supervisor took 10 years to get there. In the US, you can be a front desk supervisor in 3 months because they just needed a warm body that had the title and was willing to do the work. So there's a contrast. In the US right now, there was before the pandemic and even more exacerbated now because of the pandemic, labor shortage. People are finding that they've lost their career choice interest in hospitality. We're just not getting those resources back into our industry for lack of paying properly and whatever have you. That's going to impact our ability for service. So this training conversation we're having about investing and giving quality of service and everything to promote what we can do for ourselves marketing wise is a critical component. As pointed out, high turnover in staff is a death dagger to consistency of service, and also, as they pointed out by our phone, knowledge transfer. My example of the Xerox training of 40%, 40%, 40%. After 3 layers of training, you're down to 10%. Is just a tip of an iceberg. When you're dealing with inconsistency, you deal with lack of loyalty. And how can you ask your guests to be loyal to you and what you offer if your team who's offering that service isn't loyal to the same thing? I know we wanted to talk a little bit about loyalty program, membership, because they add to the direct channel value, because this is your chance to develop that relationship with your guests directly and saying, I value your business with me, and so I'm going to offer these things. So that was the long precursor as to what you wanted to talk about with membership and loyalty.
That's an interesting point we hadn't talked before. There's a huge difference between the US and European Union. That is, in the US, people are loyal to the brands, the Hilton, Marriott, Starwood, Wyndham, whatever. And no matter what people you will find in the reception, right? But in Europe, the hotel industry is much more fragmented and the brands are not that strong. So our clients are much more loyal to other people. So I think when you go to the same hotel and you meet the same people, friendly staff at the hotel, I mean, those people make you go back again to the hotel. So this is why the staff are so important in Europe, and the people can spend 10 years, 15 years, because that's part of the brand, right? Because they don't have this. In Hilton, to be honest, and I've been traveling around, especially last year, since I couldn't go to Europe because of the pandemic, and I always chose one of these Hyatt, Hilton, or Marriott because they give me points. And to be honest, I never thought about the people working there, because I knew that maybe the next day there would be another person running at the reception. But to me, it wasn't a problem, because everything is so well procedure, right? Everything works perfectly because of the brand. Everything is controlled. But it's completely the opposite in Europe. So I think people make a career in Europe because it's part of the brand. It's part of the DNA of the hotel. This is why it's so important. And another thing, very, very different in Europe and the US, the unemployment rate is so low in the US that the hotels are stealing people from each other. And that's acceptable. In Europe, the unemployment rate is not that low. Unfortunately, it could be 15, 20, depending on the country, especially in tourism, especially in seasonal destinations, such as Mallorca. So people, once they have a job and they are moderately happy, they stick to it, right, for many years. So once you have loyal, let's say you have loyal employees, how can you make loyal clients, right? And the first thing is that many hotels are doing loyal clients without knowing it, because they don't have the proper technology to track those loyal clients. But the tour operators know that those clients want to go to the hotel, but the hotel doesn't, which is kind of stupid, but it happens a lot. Right? So the first thing is, many hotels in Paris, in Madrid, in Barcelona, I talked to them, and how many repetitive clients do you have? No, we have very few, because we are an urban destination. Nobody repeats in Madrid that often. And that is not true. That's the first thing that they need to know. A lot of people go to Madrid, to Barcelona, to Rome, to Paris. A lot of Americans, when they travel to Europe, they stop in Paris. And if you can make them remember you, the next time they stop by in Paris, they will look for your hotel.
Yes.
And they haven't realized that you can do that with the right technology and with the right usage of that technology.
Yes.
Right. So you can do it. And that's not that difficult.
You made a great point. And I want to reemphasize that, because it's just like Duh, common sense. Okay. You made the point that it's not brand centric as it is in the US. Brand centricity means brand loyalty, although we know there's an apathy to that. But just let's just say I go to Marriott because I know what to expect at Marriott. Okay. Brand acknowledgement, homogeny of brand. In Europe, as you pointed out, there's not that as much as it is the fragmentation of ownerships. So inherently, if I've gotten a great experience at going to a hotel that is in itself its own hotel, it's its own entity, it's not part of a brand, it may be part of an ownership or what have you, but it's pretty much its own entity, and I found a good experience. Would it not make common sense to think that if I go back to the city, barring the fact I might have a different reason, like I have to be in a different part of the city and or for I'm in a different mode of travel where I'm not leisure, I might be business and I just need to get in and out, whatever. But given the same modality of going to that, wouldn't I go back to the hotel and already knew the quality level and service without thinking, oh, let me roll the dice again and trying to see if this other hotel is as good. So inherently, logically, the loyalty numbers that you're talking about where the hotel says, oh, we don't have a lot of people, is like, why would you think exactly the opposite of probably what's true?
That is correct.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is that the OTAs are the ones who are making loyal customers.
Sure.
So the Booking is making you and I loyal to Booking. And to be honest, Booking doesn't care if you go to the same hotel that you went last time, even though you were extremely happy. But what Booking wants is that you book through Booking in the hotel that pays the highest commission, right? And you being minimally happy to not to complain. So Booking and Expedia are filling the gap that hotels are leaving because they are not working it, right? Yeah. That changed, especially in the last 2 to 3 years with the boom of CRM companies and data and BI tools, right? So now hotels are adding business intelligence tools on top of their PMS, not integrating the PMS because the PMS is so rigid and obsolete, but they are just building a new layer of knowledge, which is BI, right? So with BI, they are seeing that, oh, this name is familiar. So, because this person came 3 years ago through Booking or through Jet to Holiday or through whatever channel, right? So hotels are now realizing that they have many more repetitive clients that they thought they had. And the next question is, how can I touch them, create a relationship with them, and persuade them to book my hotel in my website?
Right.
The two things, my hotel and my website.
Yeah. I mean, let me, if I just for actionable items for those that are listening in some senses, first off, if you're not collecting emails or have not historically collected the emails, that is the first thing you should try to make sure is a perpetual part of your check-in process. Yeah. That's something that... Go ahead. I'm sorry, please.
Be aware that the European Union laws, they're much more, let's say, strict than the US.
The US. You have to make sure that you do this with a defined business transaction. Yes.
I'm impressed here in the US that I get daily spam phone calls.
Oh, piles and piles of it. Yes.
Oh my God, how can that happen? And all the time. So it's a huge contrast how the European Union is so much stricter than the US.
Yes.
To follow the rules.
Yep. GDPR and CCPA. Well, CCPA is a domestic US, but it's a good platform that is balanced against GDPR and so forth. But again, following guidelines of what you can do with emails and how you collect them. It's business transactions. You're allowed to create a correspondence of value of communication. Some things that you can look at doing to evaluate your repetitiveness of guests and whether or not you want to create a collaboration for them is looking at the frequency that they stayed with you over the past 18 months to 2 years. I would say 2 years, given the circumstances of this past year, and seeing first, they're just putting people into little hoppers. Who stayed the most? Who spent the most? Who stayed the most and spent the most? And just put them into categories of people and understanding and literally thanking them, which is allowable by all circumstances of communication, thanking them for the business and offering them a reward value of just like, hey, look, we went back and looked and you stayed with us X number of times over the past 2 years, which makes you very loyal to us. We thank you so very much. So the next time you're in, we'd like to give this to you. Should you ever choose to come back with us again? It's not selling anything. It's just thanking them. You don't need
an skyrocket technology to do that. You just need an Excel spreadsheet. It's a BI tool to get the data, and it's more the attitude and the willingness to do it that the tools that you need. Because with the Google Docs, even you don't need the Microsoft license anymore. Google Spreadsheet, you can do it. So 3 buckets, 4 buckets, 5 buckets. and do whatever you want. Email them, thanking them at the reception, wherever you want, but creating a relationship with them. You don't need a super fancy loyalty club. You just need something different, and that's the first step. And many hotels think that the loyalty means expensive and fancy technology, platinum, gold, or silver cards, points, and that's stupid. You just need identify them, touch them, show them how you love them, and give them something. Of course, it could be a discount, it could be a benefit, a service, whatever. That's easy as that, right?
Yep. Now, Nikos went over and asked a legitimate question, and I have a strong answer for this, and I'm sure you do too. But I'm looking at it first and saying, okay, he's asking, what do you think about the competition this season? All of a sudden, at any moment, bookings may disappear from our books and move to a competitor that decide to offer something better than we do. This is Nico. Thank you for asking that question, because it is exactly what we're talking about with direct channel. You need to provide why they would not want to go to the other place. And it's not because of them lowering a rate or something. If that was rate driven, it's good that they went, because in all honesty, if you get into a rate war, nobody wins. We know this. So it's about you being able to put proper content and messaging out that they understand why it is better for them to have chosen you over your competitor. And I mean this in a marketing way, not just we have all these amenities and our rooms are bigger, or whatever comparison. It's not by comparing yourself to other people in the market. It's by just simply talking about what you offer as value. Everything that you mention about what is there to do around your hotel is centric to them being in your hotel. The distances, the information about what to do, what is of interest for people to do based on the demographics of their travel. Are they traveling with family? Are they traveling romantically, for business? Not that that's a strong one right now, but just in segmentation terms. And you identify content that is relevant to their type of travel for the value that you represent. And it's not about in comparison of some chart that says we have this, they don't. It's about saying what we have. Because when you make that as a part of your direct channel messaging, where your website is complete and helping, and there's technologies to this I'll mention in a little bit, but I want to give Pablo a chance to answer too, is the idea that people won't compare you for the wrong reasons. If it's $20 difference between staying with you and staying with them, they might, because of their research of discovery, still want to stay with you, because everything that they learned about what they want to travel into your market for was based on staying with you. And that $20 difference isn't worth being on the other side of town, perhaps, as much. So Pablo, I'm sorry. That was my answer to this, and I have more to it, but by all means, please.
It's an interesting topic, but not only for this pandemic in months or years. I would say it's a general question. So I mean, in this pandemic, you have decreased your rate, and you have entered into attracting demand that was not supposedly your demand, your target ideal demand, right? So you have entered in a new, let's say, target, right? And the thing is, once you start raising your rates, that's the idea, you get back to your original rate, you will eventually lose that length demand that you had in previous months. So I think that first thing, you have to understand that your existing pickup is coming from demand that is not usually your demand, that you will eventually lose it. So, and you have nothing to do with it unless you want to stick into that price range. And probably that's not the thing you want to do. Right. And the other thing is, if a client is booking a different hotel for $20 less, I think you have one of the two problems. One is that your hotel is not worth it, because a better hotel is 20%, $20 less, or hopefully the response is that you are not properly conveying the message that why your hotel is worth $20 more. So I think, but that could be because that client is not valuing that your value proposition. It's just very price sensitive. There are a lot of people who are very price sensitive, and for $20 less, they will change the hotel no matter what you do, because that's not your original target. That's just length demand, and you will lose it eventually anyway.
Yeah. And when I was mentioning technical things, and I know this is in balancing with Bing as well as it is with Google, but what is happening now is what's called an answer box. What's called Google Zero, really, what I do. And that is, by authenticity of content, people are getting answers to their questions without going to a website. As a matter of fact, 64% of all search queries don't go to a website anymore. They go through this answer box. And for those unfamiliar with it visually, it's You ask a question in Google, Bing as well, and it has the most relevant information with this big box that answers questions related to what you're asking. And those go to places that have what Google thinks is the most authoritative answer. What you can do for your website, which is what Pablo's been pointing about the whole time, is by adding the content relevant to your hotel that you've not done historically, you've allowed others to drive business for you, but making it where you turn into the authority of what you are, you get into that answer box. If you're the closest to something or you have the most information about something in your market, that link that's in that answer box, it goes to your website, which means now people start equating your property with what they want to do or what they're trying to find out more about. So inherently, it's your business to lose to somebody else, to all the points Pablo made, that, hey, look, if it's a super big, massive hotel that's amazingly wonderful and they decide to go to the basement with a rate, it wasn't yours to have anyway. It did in that sense. But when it comes to keeping perpetual business, the long-term answer to the question, that's the stuff you need to do. That content you have to own that content to be the authority on those things, and you will win. I mean, we do that.
That to me, it ties directly with two things, Lauren, that are important. And we have only 9 minutes
Yeah,
left.
right. I was about to say, we're running out of time already.
64 of the searches in Google are what Google calls zero-click searches, which is you get the direct response from Google, as you mentioned. And when I read that article, I realized that I was doing a lot of searches that didn't require any website, because Google delivers a response, such as, for instance, how many Celsius is 92 Fahrenheit. These stupid things. I mean, Google is competing with the calculator. Mm-hmm. I do math on Google. Yeah. I do when I don't know what is the last Champions League from Barcelona. Right? So those stupid questions, Google just pops up their response. And that's happening also with what time is the check-in of this hotel, or is the pool open, or how what is the breakfast? Is it buffet or continental breakfast in the hotel or whatever in Milan, right? So you're right. If you create your content to answer those long tail questions, you would be much better prepared to get that demand. That is very low in the funnel, because they're asking specific questions, but usually what you get responses are from Booking and TripAdvisor, and very rarely from the direct channel. That's one thing. And the other thing is, when we're talking about prices, because Google also return prices information in their Google Hotel Ads metasearch channel. So if you want to go to the Hilton in London Airport, right? You now, many of the users now go direct to Google, look the hotel, and check in and check out dates within Google. And this is what Google calls Google Hotel Ads. Mm-hmm. So it's a different way of having this zero-click search, because your direct channel, if you bid on that, let's say, placement, you can show your real-time price to the user in that part of the lower part of the funnel. And of course, that costs money. And you have to pay, it's a cost per click, it's a commission per stay, or whatever revenue model you choose. But that costs money. But at the same time, the user is not going to Expedia, is not going to Booking, is not going to Hilton.com. Many times it's going just to Google. They find a hotel in the map, they check in, check out, and they want to see prices. So, and a key part of the let's say the direct strategy is the right marketing investment, the right marketing approach. And within the marketing budget, metasearch, and especially Google Hotel Ads, has to be one of the biggest pieces, right? Because metasearch is growing, especially in Google, and you cannot pretend to boost your direct channel or to keep your direct channel share without being in Google Hotel Ads. I think it's a must-have.
It is a must-have, and for those who may not be familiar with it, metasearch, a little bit of what we're talking about, is now also been opened up by Google for organic metasearch, which now is reopening all the everybody else to sell your product as well, should they be connected to the ability to sell through third parties and so forth. Just as an example of what I'm talking about, we had a hotel that was in Canada that there was an amazing amount of restaurants around it. And the restaurants didn't really promote themselves well, but that was a very notable feature of the area of town that they were located in. So we started providing a tremendous amount of content on the hotel's website about these restaurants, their menus, their hours of operation, especially through the COVID process when everything was so much in change and so forth. And literally, it was very strange to discover that when people looked for these restaurants in Google, we showed up. Our hotel showed up because we had the most complete content about them. So it's not like we stole their business, because we're still driving them business. It's just that we were now associated with them because of our proximity to them, because we took the time to take the content, which goes, if you're wondering, well, where do I start? Where do I do this? It's looking at your analytics and seeing what people are looking for, looking at your attribution strings and seeing what they connect with you on. And this isn't, again, beyond normal people. This isn't where you have to hire massive agencies and people to do this. This is just looking at you. And if anything, the people at the property have the most common sense. They can tell the difference of why somebody be looking for that, because, oh yeah, it's right around the corner. Or, you know what, we're right by the name of that little canal. So yeah, of course they're going to be looking for us because we're next to the canal. That kind of sense to it means that's your starting point for this kind of content we're talking about, expanding it so that it has more value on your website, so that you begin to show up for those things as well. So, yeah.
There's one last comment I want to just to say, yes. 2 to 3 minutes. We have talked about many things: technology, training, recycling people, incentives, marketing, loyalty. But there's one thing that we haven't talked, and it's a must, and it's probably the red line, which is, now that Expedia and Booking, especially in the merchant model, will grow again once the travel bans are lifted and OTAs grow again, you have to control your price. So you can't let Expedia undercut you anymore, right? If you allow OTAs to undercut you, no matter what you do, no matter what Ferrari you have, no matter what PhD you have driving the Ferrari, you have nothing to do with Expedia undercutting you. So if you don't control your price, you are out. So it's nothing you can do to fix it, to work around that. So controlling your price, it is a must. And we're in 2021, but this problem still persists, especially, Lauren, in the Expedia mobile app, which is incredible how cheaper than the direct, even in the big guys. So I don't know how to do it, but I mean, watch out. I mean, don't think that you control your price because your SiteMinder says that you have $100 everywhere. That doesn't happen, right? Yeah,
no, it's very, very true. And you're right. You can do all of these things wonderfully well, but if you are always not selling your best price for yourself, then you will always be, you may have driven the market rate to buying and wanting to stay with you, and then they find that you can be bought cheaper someplace else. They still get to stay with you, but now you have to incur the cost of the channel because of that.
And you pay the bill, and Expedia get the it was like a low hanging fruit. It's a free lunch for Expedia because you did everything, but at the end of the day, the client eventually booking Expedia. It doesn't make any sense.
It literally, I mean, I've made the example many times. It's like literally somebody's walking into your hotel door, and Expedia walks up and go, "Hey, you want to stay at this hotel? I can give it to you for $10 less." And then they walk them up to the front desk and say, "Book them under my number." And you sit there, wait a minute, the dude was walking right into my hotel, and they just grabbed him and took him from you, and now you're having to pay this guy for doing business that you're already going to get. So yes, incredibly excellent point to that. Wow, we blew through the hour before we even knew it.
And we left many things untouched, but anyway, we can have a second part maybe. We'll talk doing good.
Right, we're going to convince the powers that be that we get to come back together again and chat more about saving the universe and all that kind of stuff. So, Pablo, thank you. Thank you. I mean, gosh,
thanks to you.
It's been awesome to be able to spend time with you, and I'm hoping for all those that joined us in the conversation and also that watch us live and recorded, this was helpful. Pablo, any parting stuff that you want to say while we still have a 30 seconds just to run, or whatever? Anything else you'd like to say?
Thank you, and thank HSMAI and for the hotels that are opening, strength and take advantage of the opportunity you have in front of you. Right.
Awesome. Well, to that, we're going to turn it back to Marcus and the powers that run all of this, and say thank you so very much for allowing us to have this dialogue in front of everyone. And we hope that everyone enjoyed it, and we hope that we get to talk to you all again sometime. Until then, have a great, wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.